What's up, guys? It's Drifts and Lifts here. Alright, so like I said on the last video, I was going to show you guys how to replace a crank pulley on a Volvo 740. So yeah, as you guys know, the red car, Miss Huff, has the crank pulley started to slip on it on my way home, and it got really bad. And it's actually fairly common with the high kilometers cars. It's happened to me twice now. With Gordon, the black wagon, as you might have seen the video where I replaced the crank pulley on that car. I didn't go into too much detail of how I did that, so that's what I'm going to be doing on this video. But yeah, so the crank pulley, let me find it. It's a two-piece. On these cars, it's essentially a two-piece pulley. So if I go into Sid's car here and pull up the DeWalt bag, okay, so here's a crank pulley right in here. So if you look, there's metal and then rubber and then metal again. So what happens is this rubber in the middle right there, it dries out, and the outside of the pulley will start rotating separately from the inside of the pulley. And obviously that is not good, because then none of your drive belts or accessory belts for your water pump and your power steering pump and your alternator, none of that stuff is going to be turning. So that's not what you want. So I'm gonna have to replace this. So I figured I'd go through a little step by step. If you guys are having problems with your car and you don't know what it is, say your alternator's not charging, your car's overheating, things like that. All of these could be a symptoms of the crank pulley failing. So when that happens, right, the crank is going to turn, but because that's separated, it's not going to turn the alternator belt or the water pump. So that is a good thing to look in. I totally forgot to think of that on the way home last night when we replaced the alternator. So it didn't turn out to be the alternator, it was the crank pulley all along. So yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process. What we're going to want to take our belts off of the alternator and take the belt off from the power steering pump and the water pump. So how you guys do that is to loosen. There's a little adjustment. Sorry, you can't really see it. A little adjustment bracket right here. So you're gonna loosen this 113 mil and then tighten or loosen the adjustment bracket with the 10 millimeter. It's the same kind of design on this side. So if you look down in here, right here is our that's our little adjustment knob, and then the locking nut for the bracket is right here. So you have to undo the locking nut, and then you're gonna go you're gonna loosen this stud right here, and that's gonna basically make the alternator go in that way, which is gonna loosen our belt. We'll be able to take it off that way. So what I'm gonna do is do that, and also we're gonna have to remove the fan so this pulley can come off. It'll make it a little bit easier. Actually, you know what, guys? Instead of loosening this power steering pump, you might be able to be lucky enough and remove these 10 millimeter nuts, pull the fan off, and this whole pulley at the top here might just come off, and it'll take your belt off with it. Alrighty, so as you can see, I took the fan off. So all it is these four holes are for these four little nuts here, and they go onto these four little studs here. So now that that's off, this pulley, as you can see, is kind of loose. So there you go. I can just take it off like that, and that automatically kind of loosens my belt. I can kind of peel it off the bottom of the power steering pump. I'm just going to move this to the side sort of thing until I get the alternator belt off. Once I have that off, then I can, I'm going to take an impact and crank that crank pulley bolt off. So it's going to be right in the middle here. It is a 15/16 size socket. So now the only thing is, guys, if you don't have an impact, I haven't ever tried this without an impact, but I've heard it's a little bit of a pain, because you need a way to hold the pulley in place. So IPD sells a tool. It's called a crank pulley holder, believe it or not. And yeah, so I guess whatever it does, it holds the pulley in place so you can actually loosen the bolt. I don't have that tool, so good thing I'm borrowing Scott's Impact, this DeWalt. That will do the trick. And yeah, so I'm going to take that off once I take the alternator belt off, and hopefully I can get the impact kind of positioned in there. Hopefully there's enough room to kind of fit it in there. I'm not too sure yet, but I think we'll be good. So that's what I'm going to do, take off that alternator. Alright, so as you guys can see, I made this belt really loose by adjusting that tensioner there. So it should just kind of come off just like that. So now that I have this belt off and that belt's just flopping there, I'm just going to put these off to the side in a good place. And now I'm going to hope to fit the impact in there and disconnect the crank pulley bolt that goes through there. So actually one thing I want to show you guys is, so these crank pulleys, this little piece right here, that little slot, that's basically a marking slot so your timing doesn't get out of whack. Because as you guys can see, this little indent right there, that little slit, that is a timing mark. So that's how, if you're doing a timing belt and stuff, this timing mark is going to it's going to give you an idea of where your timing marks are. I guess that didn't make any sense. This timing mark is going to give you an idea because on the back of this timing belt cover right here, there's timing marks, and this little nick is the one you want to line up with the 0 right there, and you want to line that up with the back, the little mark on the back of this timing cover, which would be right there. So yeah, you want to make sure that that lines up, because even if you don't line it up properly, the pulley's not even going to go on properly anyways. So yeah, that's what you got to do. So let's see if we can get this thing off. Alright, so a couple hits with the impact and the crank bolt actually came out pretty easy. So if you guys look here, here's our old crank pulley. That is not supposed to happen. So as you can see, actually this one's really bad. Like the rubber is completely, it's disintegrated a lot, and usually there's not actual side to side play like that. But yeah, this one is really bad. So we're gonna put on this one. It's probably almost as bad, but it's not slipping yet. So you know what, actually guys, I think in the near future here, I'm gonna take that old crank pulley and get someone with a welder to just tack a couple places so it doesn't, I don't really know, I guess that rubber is probably for vibration dampening and that kind of stuff, but I really don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think it's super necessary. So you know, if you put a couple little pieces of metal across and tack them, I think that would solve the problems that these have. So yeah, if you notice on the crankshaft down there, there's going to be an equal notch that's going to fit into that little slot right there. So you're going to find that, and obviously it's not going to go all the way on if you don't have it lined up properly. So line it up properly, get it snug on there, and then you can go back and, you know, hammer it back on with the impact. You're definitely going to want it tight. You don't want that thing coming off on you when you're driving. You'll basically have the same problem as I had with the slipping pulley. So yeah, I'm going to fit it and then crank it on with the impact and then get back to reassembling the belts. And honestly, it's not too bad of a job. It's pretty straightforward. Okay guys, so I got a little bit carried away here. But obviously reassembling everything is the opposite of the way you put it back on. So I made sure that that crank, the notch in the crank pulley lined up with the little notch on the crankshaft. And if it doesn't, you'll notice the crank pulley will sit farther out that way. Once you get it lined up, it will kind of seat right nice in there, and it'll be lined up with the power steering pump and the crank pulley and the water pump on the first belt line. So yeah, I impacted it on. I put a new belt on, just I had one kicking around the garage, so I figured I'd throw it in there. So the fan's on, that's all tight. Once you snug these up, these 4 bolts, this pulley right here kind of aligns itself where it should be. So just tighten those, and generally it's in the right spot. So the last step is to put the last belt on for the alternator. Tighten a couple tighten the tensioners down, because yeah, I need to lock those before, you know, I go about driving it and stuff. And then once we're done that, we can fire this thing up. So yeah, that's what I'll do. I'm going to throw that alternator belt on and show you guys what it sounds like. This car actually has a MagnaFlow muffler with like they deleted the mid muffler. They went with a MagnaFlow rear muffler and some sort of aftermarket catalytic converter. So yeah, it actually sounds like okay for a B230F. Yeah, we'll get to it. There we go, guys. So no more weird sounds. It looks like the alternator's charging. No more nonsense. So here, check this out, guys. I'll put the camera right here. Chuck a little red. Not too shabby. So yeah, that's a success, I'd say. So there we go, guys. That's the end of the video. That is how to replace a crank pulley on a Volvo 740. So yeah, like I said, if your car is giving you some weird issues, like the alternator's not charging, or the power steering is like cutting in and out intermittently, that kind of thing, check that crank pulley. It could be slipping on you. This car has 370,000 K on it, and my other car that was slipping had about 420,000 K on it. So it seems about, you know, anywhere from 300,000 to 450, they're probably likely to slip. So keep an eye on that. And yeah, that's a good thing to check if you're getting problems of that kind of thing. So anyways, that's kind of the end of the video, guys. Nothing too crazy, no drifting today, but I figured I'd show you guys that little trick to get your cars back on the road. So anyways, make sure to check out the Drifts and Lifts store. I know I always say that, but if you haven't got your Volvo Drift Ale, Lager, or Stout beer shirts, check them out. Me and Davis are thinking of coming out with something in the near future, a little bit different. Give us an idea of kind of things you guys want to see for merchandise and for t-shirts and stuff like that. I think, you know, we're probably going to end off the Volvo Drift beer shirts with the wagon. The Stout will be the last one, but we might change it up and do something a little bit different this time. So thanks for the support, guys. Really appreciate it. Yeah, that's kind of it. So like and subscribe for throbbing red Volvos. Peace out.